Hey guys, welcome back to the Brik House. Count Bricula here, and today we got week 5 of the Celestial Rumble Power Rankings. A lot of our must-plays have been dropped down this week, so it's going to be a bit interesting to see which Pokemon are going to be filling in their shoes. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so let's start with Mewtwo Y, and I have to say this is honestly one of the saddest stories I've seen in Pokemon Unite recently. Mewtwo X and Mewtwo Y both having their Mega Stones added to the game, and a little bit of tweaking done to their kits has effectively dropped them to the lowest win rate Pokemon out of anyone in the game, also rocking one of the lowest ban rates and pick rates. And you can even see over on Unite API that it is so ashamed of them, it doesn't even want to show the icon. So we did have Mewtwo Y in our could be better tier for last week, and I think it's just safe to say we gotta have to move him down right next to Mewtwo X. And yeah, Mewtwo Y and Mewtwo X, they're gonna be forced to be put into our Brik position for this next week. There's just not any good reason to be playing Mewtwo Y, especially in this meta right now. He is definitely not the attacker that you want to have on your team, and I would not be surprised whatsoever if we see some buffs on both Mewtwo X and Mewtwo Y, given that they have around a 45% win rate, which is just abysmal. So that does mean that Cramorant, who had been inhabiting our Brik position for a few weeks in a row now, does effectively move out into the bottom of our could be better tier. Now, Cramorant is a very interesting Pokemon. I love playing this bird so much. He has really good damage, especially if you're able to get ahead in that early game. Although his stationary Unite move just does not do him any favors in this meta right now. And it's always just been one of those weaker attackers. Something that Pokemon Unite just for some reason neglects. Usually hitting him with nerfs or buffs to his weaker kit, but I don't know, hopefully we'll see some more buffs coming Cramorant's way in a future patch. But again, for now, we'll just keep him in the bottom of our could be better tier, swapping with Mewtwo Y. So the last attacker that we got today is Delphox, who was at the middle of our not bad tier last week. It's definitely not controversial to say that Delphox is possibly the best attacking supporter you can have on your team. And even pairing items like the Cursed Incense with your Unite move Fanciful Fireworks will provide your team just so much value and will easily make for any all-rounder attacker on your team just to clean up any KOs that you left for them. So definitely one of the better options you can have for the attackers given this current meta, being that attackers are on the weaker side. And we're going to put Delphox just above Gardevoir for right now, given the fact that Delphox would run a lot better if you had to give it an item like the EXP share. And also having moves that are a lot easier to hit in a teamfight makes Delphox just a much more reliable pick, in my opinion, than Gardevoir currently. So next up, we're going to be going to the all-rounders, starting with Empoleon, who we had at the top of our must-play for last week. And I think this is a no-brainer, but Empoleon will most definitely go to our must-play for this week. Just looking at the win rates for this last week, Empoleon still rocking the highest at a 54%, which did go down slightly this last week. That's mostly due to the fact that it has now become available to most people who've since finished his dice roll event. So you can see his pick rate as well jump up over 21%. But the most interesting statistic about Empoleon this last week is that his ban rate has shot up to over 130%. So something only possible because of the recent changes with the ban system. Now that the same Pokemon can be banned on both teams does allow this to happen. Although it is kind of crazy to see that he has such a high ban rate, yet is still the second most picked Pokemon this last week. So that does mean Zacian moves down to the solid pick tier. So we're actually going to be putting Zacian just right above Blaziken for this week, just under Palmont. Zacian still performing very well as an all-rounder. It just goes to show that these previous releases have been very overpowered and have easily toppled the all-rounder at week over week had the highest win rate out of anyone in the game. So the last all-rounder we're going to go through today is Mega Lucario, who we did place around the middle of our solid pick tier. And we will be putting Mega Lucario just above Zacian. As I was just saying earlier, the previous 3 releases that we've had, Empoleon, Palmont, and Mega Lucario, have shown to be so oppressive, especially in the solo queue games. All 3 of these Pokemon having the highest win rates and ban rates this last week, and a trend I definitely can see going forward for the next week until some nerfs come their way, because as it currently stands, you can very much expect them to inhabit the top 3 position for the next couple of weeks. So that's going to be the end of our all-rounders, and next we're going to be moving on to our speedsters. So kicking things off, we have Galarian Rapidash, who had inhabited our must-play for a couple weeks in a row now. It is definitely a good Pokemon for this current meta, and also very versatile, being able to be one of the only speedsters that can also support. Although because it has such a specific playstyle that is very unique to Galarian Rapidash that a lot of players don't usually adapt to, it's definitely not the easiest Pokemon to pick up. And right now we also have a couple speedsters who are doing very good in this current meta, as they are providing fairly decent answers to these all-rounders that are currently dominating. We'll move Galarian Rapidash down to a solid pick tier. So next up we got Leafeon. Now Leafeon is a pretty good early game speedster, definitely focused on getting that early snowball to perform well. One of those speedsters that are harder to play in a solo queue setting, as it does rely a lot on your team's positioning, and right now with the map being so snowball heavy, especially that top side being extremely weak, Leafeon is in a bit of a better position. We will be moving it up from the could be better to the not bad tier, just at the bottom under 0 aura for now. So up next we have Darkrai, and Darkrai has been rather middle of the road in terms of speedsters, and mostly due to the fact that it has a fairly poor secure potential. Although this last week, it has actually become the only speedster aside from Galarian Rapidash to actually increase in its win rate. A lot of these speedsters are actually seeing a pretty dramatic fall when it comes to these win rates. Some speedsters even falling as far as 2% this last week. And with Darkrai being one of the only speedsters that actually was able to gain some rank, it does put it into a very good position for this week. Darkrai also has a very wide use case potential. It's a speedster that can easily go into one of the lanes as a carry or even as a support, which gives Darkrai just this immense amount of versatility, much like Galarian Rapidash, although it does have the added bonus of being very easy to get the hang of, especially your Dark Void and Nasty Plot combos. So right now with this current meta, especially with all these all-rounders everywhere, Pokemon with a lot of AoE and CC like Darkrai is performing extremely well, and I can see its win rate only going higher and higher these next couple of weeks. And for this week, I think we're going to actually put Darkrai all the way up into our must play. Next up we have Talonflame, and Talonflame will actually be moving up to the solid pick this next week despite its falling win rate. It is one of those easier speedsters to get the hang of. Honestly, both its sets going up, Brave Bird or Fly, are very good options, and it's definitely a Pokemon I would recommend just getting the hang of if you haven't already done so. So next up we have Meowscarada. Now Meowscarada was in the could be better tier for the last week, and just like Leafeon, we're going to be moving it up to the not bad tier. It's definitely a decent Pokemon, and it just has the same kind of drawbacks that most of these speedsters currently have in this meta, where they're very squishy targets that can fall off in that late game, and right now a lot of these all-rounders are getting so much damage that they can just kind of one-shot a lot of these speedsters and just completely shut them down. Meowscarada being no exception to that. So Meowscarada, not a bad pick for this next week, but there's definitely some better speedsters you can choose. So next up we have our defenders, and first up we have Ho-Oh, who was in our must play ever since it had that rework. Ho-Oh being just such an oppressive defender while having so much damage has been very difficult for a lot of these attackers to deal with in the laning phase. Although as more games have been involving all-rounders instead of attackers, it's actually been a lot harder for Ho-Oh to provide its lane with that early game momentum it usually does so. So Ho-Oh hasn't really gotten a nerf at all, although it has seen a slipping win rate over the last couple of weeks. It still is one of the better defenders that you can use, as the potential you can get from his Unite move is unparalleled to really any Pokemon in the game. Although, because we're going up against a lot more all-rounders instead of attackers, especially during that laning phase, it's hard for Ho-Oh to really just gain any momentum over the opponent, and so we're going to be moving him just down to the solid pick tier, just under Trevenant. This does mean that our must-play slot is open to none other than Crustle, who, unlike Ho-Oh, does extremely well against a lot of all-rounders, being able to either slow them down or even just create the walls that will just completely stop them in their place and allow your team to jump on them afterwards. Crustle, also being a 2-stage evolution, makes it extremely easy to get online as well. So easy pick to put Crustle all the way to a must-play for this week. So last but not least, we have our supports. And originally I was actually going to move Sableye up to the not bad tier. Although this last week, Sableye has actually dropped down to the bottom 5 of the win rates, rocking in only a 46% win rate, and a Pokemon that actually isn't that reliable on getting many wins on, and honestly just kind of hovering over the Brik position over Latias, who again is just underperforming very much so compared to a lot of the cast members. So last up we have Eldegoss, and Eldegoss we had in our could be better for a couple weeks in a row now, and has honestly been doing very well behind the scenes. It has actually reached all the way up to the top 10 win rates for this last week, being at a 51%, and even having a rather high pick rate, hovering around 21%. So it's really nice to see that Eldegoss has been getting some consistent results recently. Being one of the first supports in the game, it's very easy for it to be outshadowed by a lot of the newer additions. Although because of all the all-rounders that are running around, it's definitely one of the better supports to have on your team, as the healing and the shield that is provided from Eldegoss is still very unique to the Pokemon. So for this week, we'll put it at the bottom of our solid pick. We'll keep an eye on Eldegoss. We may end up moving it a little bit up for this next couple weeks if it still has a consistent win rate. But that's going to be it for the power rankings for this week. Had a lot of changes in our must play. Empoleon, Darkrai, and Crustle all now inhabiting it, kicking out the previous 3 owners. And I gotta say, it's a bit of a no-brainer to put Pokemon like Empoleon in our must-play right now. It is just such an impressive Pokemon, and I would not be surprised whatsoever if really next week we see that Empoleon is going to be getting nerfed. It's also interesting to see that Pokemon like Mewtwo Y are doing so poorly right now, and I do hope they can get at least a little bit of a nudge in the right direction, as right now their 44% win rate is definitely not going to be doing them any favors. So let me know down in the comments if you agree or disagree. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the Brik House. I've been Count Bricula, and until next time guys, stay nasty. Von Brik to Brik.